Hi guys, how's it going? I hope everyone's doing well. I miss you. I hope that you are having some fun while doing your online distance learning. I hope you're reading lots of books. Um, I am hanging out here at home today and I have a scooter. Look, there's my scooter. Say hi to everybody, Scoot. He's just snuggly. He's happy that I'm home today. Anyway, I want to continue with Fablehaven with you guys. So I'm going to just pick up right where we left off. If you want to follow along, I am on page 58. Remember some of the things that happened? Seth found the Nipsies with Newell and Doran, and some of the Nipsies had turned kind of bad and were trying to attack the other kingdoms. And then Kendra is getting ready to go to a Knights of the Dawn meeting. So here we go, page 58. The thought of meeting with the Knights of the Dawn filled her with worry. It all seemed so mysterious. Even without the threat of traitors, it did not sound like a place where she belonged. Her chief comfort was remembering that Warren, Coulter, and Tanu would be there as well. Nothing too terrible would happen with them around. As Kendra walked up the steps to the covered porch, she saw Tanu and Coulter reach the yard in a cart pulled by Hugo. When the golem came to a stop, Tanu and Coulter sprang to the ground and started toward the house. They both wore serious expressions and walked purposefully. There was no panic in their movements, but it looked like they had bad news. "How'd it go?" Kendra called. "Something very strange is going on," Tanu replied. "Go tell Stan we need to talk." Kendra ran into the house. "Grandpa, Tanu and Coulter found something." Her cry brought not only her grandfather, but Grandma, Warren, and Seth as well. "Are the Nipsies still at it?" Seth asked. "I don't know," Kendra answered, turning to face the back door as Tanu and Coulter entered. "What is it?" Grandpa asked. "When we approached the meadow of the Seven Kingdoms, a shadowy figure fled," Tanu said. "We gave chase, but the scoundrel was too quick." "It wasn't quite like anything we'd ever seen," Coulter said. "Maybe 3 feet tall. It wore a dark cloak and ran low to the ground in a crouch." As he used his hands expressively, Kendra was reminded that Coulter was missing a pinky and part of the neighboring ring finger. "A hermit troll?" Grandpa asked. Tanu shook his head. A hermit troll could not have entered the meadow, and this did not quite fit the description. "We have a theory," Coulter affirmed. "We'll get to that in a second." "What's a hermit troll?" Seth asked. "The smallest of the trolls," Warren said. "They never stay in one place long, setting up temporary lairs anywhere from a quiet attic to under a bridge to inside a barrel." "Go on," Grandpa encouraged Tanu. "We got inside the hill and found the 6th and 7th kingdoms gearing up for war again, in spite of the extensive damage Newell had caused." "Stan," Coulter said, "you wouldn't have believed it. The 6th and 7th kingdoms are draped in black, with most of the citizens bearing arms. The Nipsies in those kingdoms were as Seth described, with gray skin, dark hair, and red eyes. They tried to bribe Tanu and me to assist them, and issued threats when we refused. If I didn't know better, I would say they had fallen." "But Nipsies don't have a fallen state," Grandma said. "At least nothing documented. Fairies can turn into imps, nymphs can become mortal, but who ever heard of a Nipsie being transfigured?" "Nobody," Tanu said, "but there they were, which leads me to my theory. I think the creature we were chasing was some species of fallen dwarf." "Dwarfs don't fall either," Grandpa huffed, clearly perturbed. "Tell that to this one," Coulter muttered. "It's our best guess," Tanu said. "We interrogated the Nipsies to see how all of this originated. Evidently, it began when they were exploring the preserve, looking for ways to keep the satyrs out. That was how the Dark Ones met their new master. When we started fishing for specifics, they clammed up," Coulter said. "What could make a Nipsie fall?" Grandpa mused, as if speaking to himself. "I've never seen anything like it," Coulter said. "Nor heard of anything like it," Tanu added. "Nor I," Grandpa sighed. "Normally, my first call would be to the Sphinx. Maybe it still should be. Friend or foe, he has always given sound advice, and none can match his knowledge of lore. Does the condition appear to be spreading?" Tanu noisily cracked his knuckles. According to some of the normal Nipsies, after the Fifth Kingdom was invaded, a good portion of those Nipsies were carried off and became like the others. Do you want Tanu and me to skip meeting with the knights? Coulter offered. No, you should attend, Grandpa said. I want all three of you watching over Kendra and learning what you can. I overheard the fairies saying something strange today, Kendra said. It might be related. They were talking about a way to be dark like imps, but beautiful. One fairy seemed enamored by the idea, the other flew away immediately. Strange things are certainly afoot at Fablehaven, Grandpa said. I had better go make some calls. Grandpa, Grandma, and Warren left the room. Seth, a word, if I may, Tanu said. Seth crossed to the hulking Samoan, who shepherded him into the corner. Kendra lingered to hear. Tanu glanced at her and went on. I've noticed some interesting tracks in the meadow of the Seven Kingdoms, Tanu said casually. Looked like the satyrs had some help gaining entry. Don't tell Grandpa, Seth pleaded. If we were going to tell him, we already would have, Tanu said. Coulter and I figured you were in enough hot water already. Just keep in mind, Hugo is not a toy for helping satyrs steal. Gotcha, Seth said with a relieved smile. Tanu looked at Kendra. Can you keep this one under your hat? His eyes demanded a yes. Sure, she said. I've filled my daily quota for ratting on Seth. Chapter 4, New Nights. That's K-N-I-G-H-T-S. So not nighttime, nights. When the baggage carousel jolted to life, passengers from Kendra's flight pressed to be closest to the opening from which their belongings would emerge. A parade of suitcases commenced, many of them black and about the same size. Several had ribbons tied around the handles to help the owners differentiate between them. Kendra had placed smiley face stickers on hers. It was peculiar hanging out with Tanu, Coulter, and Warren at the baggage claim. She associated them with magical potions, enchanted relics, and supernatural creatures. This setting seemed much too common. Tanu dipped a pretzel into a small plastic container of molten cheese. Warren turned to the final page of his paperback. Coulter penned an answer on the crossword from the in-flight magazine. Around them waited a random assortment of passengers. A pair of business travelers stood nearest, wearing slightly rumpled suits and expensive wristwatches. Kendra lunged forward when her suitcase appeared, darting between a nun and a grungy guy in a tie-dyed shirt and sandals. Tanu accepted the bag after she yanked it off the carousel. The other luggage followed soon after. Tanu wadded his napkin into his cheese cup and chucked it into a garbage can, then collected his baggage. Coulter threw out the magazine. Anybody want to read about a genetically enhanced super spy? Warren asked, waving his paperback. It's a bestseller. Lots of action. Twist ending. He held it toward the trash receptacle. I might check it out, Kendra said, uneasy about the thought of discarding an undamaged book. She zipped the rescued paperback into her suitcase, then extended the handle so she could wheel the bag around. The four of them headed away from the baggage claim toward a set of automatic doors. A man in a suit and a black cap was holding a sign with the name Tanagatoa printed in marker. We have a chauffeur? Kendra asked, impressed. For going out of the city, a limousine cost only a little more than a taxi, Tanu explained. Why isn't my name on the sign? Warren complained. My name is the rarest, Tanu said with a smile. He greeted the man with the sign and waved him off from trying to help carry bags. They followed the man out to the curb and along a sidewalk where a black limo with tinted windows idled. The driver, a well-dressed Middle Eastern man, loaded their suitcases into the trunk and then held the door as they entered the vehicle. Warren kept his smaller suitcase. I've never ridden in a limo before, Kendra confided to Coulter. It's been a while for me too, Coulter said. She and Coulter sat on one side, facing Tanu and Warren on the other, with plenty of room between. Kendra ran a hand over the plush upholstery. The air smelled like pine, with a faint undercurrent of cigarette smoke. After Tanu confirmed the address with the driver, the limousine nosed out into a clogged lane. They made small talk as the driver found the highway. How long is the trip? Kendra asked. About an hour, Coulter said. Any last-minute tips? Kendra asked. Don't reveal your name to anyone, Coulter said. Don't mention Fablehaven, your grandparents, or where you come from. Don't tell your age. Don't show your face. Don't allude to any of your abilities. Don't mention the Sphinx. Don't speak unless you must. Most of the knights gather information eagerly. Goes with the territory. Whether they're good or bad, I say the less they know, the better. So, what can I do? Kendra asked. Maybe I should just wear the invisibility glove and hide in a corner. Let me qualify Coulter's recommendation not to speak, Tanu said. Feel free to ask questions of your own. Get to know people. The fact that you're new gives you a valid excuse to solicit information. Just try not to reveal much. Gather info, don't dispense it. Be wary of any stranger who takes too much interest in you. Don't go anywhere alone with anyone. We'll stay close, but not too close, Warren said. We all know other knights, a few of them rather well. They will be able to spot us. We don't want to make it too easy for others to associate you with us. Do we have you wound up yet? Coulter asked. I'm pretty nervous, Kendra confessed. Relax! Have fun, Warren encouraged. Right, while I try to follow all of my instructions and avoid getting abducted, Kendra moaned. That's the spirit, Warren cheered. Other cars on the highway had their lights on as dusk approached. Kendra settled back in her seat. The others had warned her it might be a late night. She had tried to sleep on the plane but had felt too anxious, and the seat had not reclined enough. Instead, she had used headphones to listen to the flight's different audio channels, including hit-and-miss selections of stand-up comedy and pop music. Now, in the dim limo, she had a little more room, and drowsiness caught up to her. She decided not to fight it. Her eyelids drooped, and she spent a few minutes on the edge of sleep, hearing the others make occasional comments as if from underwater. In her restless dream, Kendra found herself roaming a carnival holding a blue cloud of cotton candy in a disposable white stick. Remember, this is a dream. At the age of 4, Kendra had gotten separated from her family at a fairground for almost half an hour, and the scene before her was quite similar. Calliope music hooted and shrilled. A nearby Ferris wheel ground round and round, elevating riders high into the evening sky before plunging them back down, the mechanism squealing and growling like the ride was about to collapse. Kendra caught glimpses of family members in the crowd, but when she tried to shoulder through the throng to reach them, they were gone. On one such occasion, she thought she saw her mom walk behind a popcorn stand. When Kendra followed, she found herself confronted by a tall stranger with a gray afro. Smiling like he knew a secret, the man tore away a big piece of her cotton candy and stuck it in his mouth. Kendra held the treat away from him, glaring, and a fat woman wearing braces plucked at it from behind. Soon, Kendra found herself pushing through the multitude, trying to get away from the many strangers devouring her cotton candy. But it was no use. The entire crowd was stealing from her, and soon all she retained in her grasp was a naked white stick. When Coulter jostled her awake, she felt relieved, although a lingering, unsettled feeling persisted. She must be even more stressed about the evening than she realized to have such an obnoxious dream. Warren had opened his bag and was dispersing robes and masks. The long robes were constructed of a thin, strong material, dark gray with a slight shimmer. We're almost there, Warren informed her. Unfastening her seatbelt, Kendra pulled the robe over her head. Warren handed her a silver mask. Coulter put on his. All 4 masks looked identical. Smooth and shiny, the simple grinning mask covered her entire face. It felt a little heavier than she liked. Kendra tapped her knuckles against the metallic forehead. Are these things bulletproof? She asked. They're not flimsy, Tanu said. Use your hood, Coulter suggested, his voice somewhat muffled by his mask. His hood was up, leaving none of his head exposed. He could have been anyone. Warren handed Kendra light, snug gloves that matched the cloak. She removed her shoes and stepped into gray slippers. Warren and Tanu put on their masks. How will I know you? Kendra asked. Tanu will be the easiest because of his size, Warren said, but he isn't the only large knight. Warren raised a hand and laid 2 fingers beside his temple. This will be our sign. You need never make it. We'll keep you in view. The limousine turned off the road and advanced through open gates along a smooth driveway flanked by white statues of maidens clad in togas, armored heroes, animals, mermaids, and centaurs. Up ahead, the mansion came into view. A castle? Kendra gasped. Illuminated by numerous lights in the yard and dozens of electric sconces, the fortress loomed bright in the dwindling twilight. Built entirely of yellowish stone blocks, the broad stronghold boasted multiple rounded towers of varying height, a lowered drawbridge, a raised portcullis, lancet windows, arrow loops, and battlements atop the walls. Liveried servants stood at attention at either side of the drawbridge, bearing lanterns. Kendra turned to her masked companions. I know you call yourself knights, but seriously? Fairy collectors, Warren grunted. They tend to be an eccentric crowd, but Wesley and Marion Fairbanks might take the prize. The limousine pulled to a stop. The driver opened the door facing the drawbridge. They got out, and Tanu pulled the chauffeur aside, speaking softly and handing him some money. A servant, wearing a powdered wig and red knickers, those are pants, over white stockings, approached and offered a dignified bow. Welcome, honored guests. Please follow me. Kendra saw a battered white van pulling up behind the limo. The driver was wearing a silver mask. Off to one side of the grounds, a pair of helicopters sat on the lawn. In another area, a few dozen cars were parked, ranging from luxury vehicles to junk lot candidates. The costume servant escorted Kendra and her friends toward the drawbridge. Her robe reached her ankles, allowing her to take normal strides without feeling too billowy. The mask limited her peripheral vision, but otherwise she could see fine. The group passed into a cobbled courtyard lit by electric cressets. Swirls of insects orbited the light sources. A few clusters of robed figures in silver masks strolled the area, conversing. Above them, banners and flags hung limply in the still night air. The servant led Kendra and the others across the courtyard to a heavy iron-bound door, opened it with a key, stepped inside, and bowed. Warren led the way into an ornate antechamber at the mouth of a cavernous hallway. A desk sat off to one side of the antechamber before a pair of curtained booths. A person in a silver mask sat at the desk. Behind stood 4 robed figures, their silver masks trimmed with gold. A short woman wearing a mauve gown greeted them. Welcome, travelers, to our humble retreat. May you find safe harbor here until duty whisks you elsewhere. She had an average build and looked to be in her 50s. Her chestnut hair was braided in an antiquated style. A ring on her left hand held an obscenely huge diamond. A pleasure to see you again, Mrs. Fairbanks, Warren said with a genteel air. Our thanks for opening your home to us. She flushed with pleasure. Any time, no invitation required. Behind her stood a jovial man in a powdered wig eating chicken and vegetables off of a skewer. Quite so, he said, juice dribbling down his chin. A pleasure as always, Wesley, Warren acknowledged, inclining his head. Biting into a mushroom, the man in the wig nodded back. Warren turned to face the 4 masked figures in front of the booths. North, he said, jerking a thumb at himself. West, he gestured at Tanu and Coulter. Then he indicated Kendra. Novice. The novice is east, said the man sitting at the desk. Warren leaned into Kendra. These are the 4 lieutenants. They verify who we are under the masks as a security measure. Each oversees a certain group named by the points of the compass. The eastern lieutenant will confirm your identity. Warren went into a booth with one of the figures in a gold-trimmed mask. A different lieutenant marshaled Tanu into the other booth. Warren emerged promptly, mask in place, and another lieutenant, the tallest one, guided Kendra into the vacant booth. Remove your mask, please, said a gruff voice. Kendra took off the mask. The lieutenant nodded. Welcome, you may proceed. We'll speak more shortly. Kendra replaced her mask and exited the booth at the same time as Coulter left the other one. Together, they followed Warren and Tanu down the extravagant hall, treading on a long red carpet edged with intricate embroidery. Tapestries hung from the walls, and full suits of gleaming armor flanked the corridor. Warren and Tanu passed through white double doors into a spacious salon dominated by a tremendous chandelier. Robed figures stood about, most of them conversing in groups of 2 or 3. Sofas, chairs, and divans were spaced around the room to allow for many separate groups to sit and chat in comfort. The outside of the home might look like a fortress, but inside it was definitely a mansion. Tanu and Warren split up after entering the room. Following their lead, Kendra wandered over to a corner on her own. A couple of masked figures nodded at her as she passed. She nodded back, terrified to say a word. Finding a place where she could stand with her back to the wall, Kendra surveyed the crowd. She was a good height for her age, but in this room, she was on the short end of the spectrum. A few of the other knights were unusually tall. A few were abnormally fat. Several looked broad and burly. A decent number were obviously women, and one was small enough to be 8 years old. All wore the same silver masks and similar robes. Kendra counted more than 50 knights in total. The nearest knights were a group of 3, talking and laughing. After a while, one of them turned and stared at Kendra. Kendra tilted her face away, but it was too late. The figure was already crossing to her. "And what are you doing here in the corner?" asked a teasing female voice with a heavy French accent. Sorry, my French is very rusty. I don't think I could handle it. Kendra had not identified the stranger as a woman until she spoke. A good answer refused to enter her mind. She felt much too self-conscious. "Just waiting for the meeting?" "But the small talk is part of the meeting," the woman enthused. "Where have you been lately?" A direct question. Should she lie? She settled on vagueness. "Here and there." "I recently returned from the Dominican Republic," the woman said. "Absolutely perfect weather. I was tracking an alleged member of the society, a man who was asking questions about acquiring a dullion." Kendra had seen a dullion before, made of straw, when she was fleeing her home earlier in the summer. Vanessa had explained that they were like golems, although not quite as powerful. "Rumor has it there is a warlock on the island who can create them. Can you imagine the implications if that art has survived? I have been unable to confirm the tale, so who knows? I don't recognize you and you sound young. Are you new?" The woman spoke so frankly that Kendra felt considerable pressure to open up. Besides, it would be almost impossible for Kendra to disguise her youth. "I'm fairly young," she said. "Yes." "I started young myself. You know—" "There you are," Warren interrupted. Beside him stood a tall figure in a silver mask with gold trim. "If you will excuse us," the lieutenant apologized to the Frenchwoman, "this young lady has an appointment with the captain." "I was about to guess she was a novice," the woman gushed. "So nice to meet you. Hopefully we can work together sometime." "Nice to meet you," Kendra replied as Warren took her elbow and guided her away. The 3 of them exited the room and strode down the grandiose hallway to a smaller corridor. Some distance down the corridor, they stopped at a mahogany door. "Your presence is irregular," the lieutenant informed Warren. "Inducting a minor is irregular as well," Warren said. "I promised her grandfather she wouldn't leave my sight." "You know me, Warren," the lieutenant said. "Where would the child be safer than here?" "Again, the operative word is child," Warren insisted. The lieutenant gave a curt nod and opened the door. The 3 of them entered. 3 people were already in the room. One stood over by a wide fireplace, wearing a silver robe and a golden mask. The other 2 people wore silver masks and robes like Kendra's. "Warren?" asked the figure in a gold mask in a feminine southern accent. "What are you doing here?" "Captain, this candidate is a minor," Warren said. "I have been mandated by her guardian not to let her out of my sight. It is the condition of her attendance." "Understandable," the figure in the golden mask said. "Very well, I suppose we're ready to begin." Kendra leaned over to Warren. "How did she know who you—" "You're curious how I knew it was Warren entering with you?" the captain asked. She tapped her mask. "This golden mask sees through all the silver ones. I have to know all the knights under my command. I hand-select them, and I keep watch. In case any of you are wondering, no, this is not my real voice. It's another special feature of my mask. Lieutenant, shall we proceed?" The lieutenant removed his mask. He had bushy red hair and freckles on his broad brow. He looked oddly familiar, but Kendra could not place him. "You 3 novices are receiving knighthood today. Today's recruits have been assigned to the east, and so I am your lieutenant, Dugan Fisk. You will know my face, and I will know yours. Please remove your masks." Kendra looked to Warren. He nodded, taking off his own mask. Kendra pulled hers off as well. One of the other people wearing a silver mask was shorter than Kendra. Without her mask, Kendra saw that she was quite elderly, probably older than Grandma, with a narrow, wrinkled face and steel gray hair pulled into a bun. The other person in the room was a boy a few inches taller than Kendra. He was slim and could not be past his teenage years. Nice looking, with tan, flawless skin, thin lips, and dark eyes. He looked at Kendra, and for a moment appeared absolutely awestruck, staring at her with such admiration that she wanted to hide behind her mask before she blushed. After the initial stunned reaction, he managed to regulate his expression. He raised his eyebrows slightly, the corners of his mouth twitching toward an uncertain smile. "The captain almost always keeps the mask on," Dugan explained. Our brotherhood exists mainly to combat a secretive and subtle organization, the Society of the Evening Star, and so secrecy is required on our part as well. We use checks and balances to monitor one another. The captain knows all of the knights. The 4 lieutenants each know the knights assigned to them, along with the identity of the captain. Each knight knows the lieutenant he or she reports to, as you now know me. And each of the knights knows some other knights, as you are now meeting one another. Be most careful about revealing your membership in this brotherhood to others, even after they have reason to guess it. Why are we east? The teenage boy asked, tripping painfully over the first consonant. No good reason, just a tool of delegation, the captain said. Oh, sorry, I forgot my voice. No good reason, just a tool of delegation, the captain said. Despite being called the Knights of the Dawn, this is not a military body. Titles like captain and lieutenant are strictly for organizational purposes. We compartmentalize information for the security of all. Your participation in this group is strictly voluntary. You can quit the Brotherhood at any time. We do demand secrecy, however. If we did not trust that you could handle that requirement, you would not be here. And that's where I'm going to stop for today. We're on page 76, so I will post another video tomorrow. It was so good to be able to share this with you. We're getting into some really exciting stuff with Fablehaven, and I hope you stick with it and keep watching the videos. I'll read for 20-30 minutes, hopefully about every day, so we can keep up with our story. And you can email me, guys, anytime if you have any questions, if you just want to say hi. I hope this is over soon and we can get back to the classroom because I miss you, and I just hope you have a really great day. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.